Hey everyone, ready to dive into a topic that's both fascinating and a little bit unsettling.
Sounds intriguing.
It is. Today we're going deep on gaslighting.
Ah, gaslighting. That's a term we're hearing more and more these days.
Yeah, and you've sent in some seriously interesting material on this, so
Let's unpack it together.
absolutely. We're going to explore what gaslighting is, how it works, and where it came from. Plus, get this, we're going to cover some surprising connections to like a 1940s film.
Oh, wow. The 1940s. Now, that's a twist I wasn't expecting.
I know, right?
So, what's the story with gaslighting in this old film?
Well, you won't believe this. The term actually comes from a 1938 play called Gaslight.
Gaslight, okay.
Then there was that film adaptation in '44. The story is about this husband who manipulates his wife into thinking she's like losing her mind.
Oh, wow. That's pretty intense.
It is. He does things like dimming the gas lights in their house and then like totally denies he did anything. And it's from this very literal act of dimming the gas lights that the term gaslighting was born.
So, it's like he's literally messing with her perception of reality.
Yeah, twisting her reality to make her doubt herself.
That's a powerful image. And I guess that's the essence of gaslighting, isn't it? Making someone question their own sanity.
Exactly. It's about systematically undermining someone's confidence in their own perceptions and experiences. It's way more than just telling a lie, you know. It's a deliberate pattern of
Yeah.
manipulation.
Right. It's like a carefully crafted campaign to make someone doubt their own version of reality.
And the material you sent actually outlines five key tactics that gaslighters use. Should we break those down?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Understanding these tactics is really key to recognizing gaslighting when it happens. The first one is denying events or statements, even when you know they happened or were said.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Like that classic line, "I never said that," or "You're making things up." Even when you have a clear memory of it.
Ah, it's so frustrating.
Got to make you feel crazy, right?
Yeah. Think about it. That kind of denial makes you start questioning your own memory. And over time it can really erode your confidence in what you know to be true.
Right. You start second guessing yourself constantly.
Exactly.
So what's the next tactic?
Okay, so the next one is what we call distortion of reality. This is where the gaslighter kind of twists facts and memories to fit their own narrative. It's a subtle rewriting of history, almost like they're trying to convince you that their version of events is the absolute truth, even if it totally contradicts your clear recollection.
So if someone's already questioning their memory from that first tactic, this just throws them even further off balance.
Right. It's like a 1-2 punch. That's why gaslighting can be so difficult to break free from. It sets up this cycle of doubt and confusion. Now, the third tactic gets a little more complex, psychologically projection.
Projection. Isn't that where someone basically accuses you of the very thing they're doing?
Exactly. It's like a classic blame-shifting maneuver. Let's say the gaslighter is the one being dishonest, but they turn around and accuse you of being deceitful or manipulative.
Wow. So instead of taking responsibility for their actions, they deflect it onto you.
Yeah.
I can see how that would be super frustrating, especially if you're already feeling kind of insecure.
It is. It is. Projection puts you on the defensive, making you focus on proving your innocence rather than addressing the gaslighter's behavior. Okay. The fourth tactic, our material highlights, is manipulation through distraction and confusion.
This one sounds especially chaotic.
It can be.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, imagine dealing with someone who's constantly changing topics, using emotional outbursts, or making illogical arguments.
Oh, I see.
It's like a whirlwind of confusing and contradictory information that just leaves you feeling completely disoriented.
So it's less about specific lies and more about creating this overall atmosphere of instability and uncertainty?
Precisely. The goal is to prevent you from thinking clearly or seeing the bigger picture.
Wow.
They thrive on keeping you off balance and emotionally dependent on them.
Okay, so that's four down. What's the final tactic?
Okay, the last one is isolating you from your support system. And this is one of the most insidious tactics because it cuts you off from the people who might, validate your concerns or offer a different perspective.
Right, because if you're surrounded by people who reinforce the gaslighter's narrative,
Yeah.
it becomes even harder to break free.
Exactly. It's like they're creating a world where they have complete control over the information you receive and the people you interact with. They might try to convince you that your friends and family are untrustworthy or have ulterior motives.
This is all pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
It's starting to make sense why gaslighting can have such a devastating impact on a person's well-being.
You're absolutely right. It's not just about feeling a little confused or frustrated. Gaslighting can have serious long-term
Right?
consequences.
It can really mess you up.
Yeah, it can erode your self-esteem, trigger anxiety and depression, and damage your relationships with others.
So we've established that gaslighting can show up in our personal relationships. But I'm curious of how these tactics might play out in other areas of life. What about like in the workplace or even in politics?
That's a great point. Gaslighting isn't limited to our personal lives. These tactics can be used in any situation where there's a power dynamic at play. We're seeing more and more examples of gaslighting in the workplace, politics, and even the media.
That's a bit unsettling, to be honest. Should we dive into those examples now?
Let's do it. I think you'll find it quite enlightening to see how these seemingly personal tactics can operate on a much larger scale.
Okay. I'm ready. Let's
Yeah.
start with the workplace. Can you paint a picture of what gaslighting might look like in a professional setting?
Sure. Imagine a boss who constantly undermines your contributions, takes credit for your ideas, or sets you up for failure.
Oof. I've heard stories like that.
They might deny making promises, shift blame, or give you contradictory instructions, leaving you feeling, confused and incompetent.
Ugh, yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare. It's one thing to experience this kind of manipulation in a personal relationship, but to deal with it at work, where your livelihood is on the line, that's got to be incredibly stressful.
It can be incredibly demoralizing. You start to question your abilities, your judgment, and even your career choices. It's like that boss is chipping away at your confidence day after day.
And I imagine it makes it like almost impossible to advocate for yourself or to push
Oh.
back against unfair treatment because you're constantly doubting yourself.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It creates this power imbalance
Yeah.
where the gaslighter holds all the cards
Mhm.
and you feel silenced and powerless.
Wow. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about gaslighting in the realm of politics. This is where things get really interesting and maybe a little scary.
I agree. It's a whole other level.
Politics is already kind of a minefield.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine how gaslighting tactics can like amplify that.
Right.
What are some examples of how this might play out on a political stage?
Well, think about those times when a political figure denies obvious facts or twists statistics or even rewrites history to fit their agenda.
Oh yeah, we've definitely seen that happen.
It's like they're trying to create an alternate reality where their version of events is the only one that matters.
So it's about manipulating public perception on a grand scale, using those same tactics of denial and distortion and confusion that we talked about earlier.
Precisely. And what's even more concerning is the use of inflammatory language and unfounded accusations
Yeah.
to discredit opponents. And so discord among the public.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to create so much noise and chaos that people just don't know who or what to believe anymore.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be aware of these tactics and,
Yeah.
and to develop a healthy skepticism towards information, especially in the political arena.
Yeah, you really have to be careful about what you're consuming and where you're getting your information from.
Absolutely.
It makes you realize how vulnerable we all are to this kind of manipulation,
Hmm.
especially when it's coming from figures of authority or those who, hold positions of power.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like it highlights the importance of critical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
media literacy, being able to discern fact from fiction. So let's move on to our final example. Gaslighting in the media.
Yeah.
And this was particularly relevant, I think, in our current information landscape, where we're constantly bombarded with news or opinions from all these various sources.
It's a real challenge to navigate.
Yeah, it feels like it's harder than ever to know what to trust these days. So how does gaslighting, like, how does it manifest itself in the media? What should we be looking out for?
Well, think about how certain media outlets might selectively report on events or cherry pick data or use biased language to frame narratives that fit their agenda.
Right. I've noticed that.
They might even omit crucial information or present things out of context
Yeah.
to sway public opinion.
So it's not necessarily about outright lies, but more about a subtle manipulation of information to create a specific narrative or to push a certain viewpoint.
Exactly. It's like they're holding up a distorted mirror to reality,
Yeah.
shaping our perception of events through a carefully curated lens.
And the danger here is that if we're not aware of these tactics, we can easily fall prey to this manipulation and end up believing a version of reality that's not entirely accurate.
Yeah, that's the insidious nature of gaslighting. It preys on our trust
Yeah.
and on our desire to make sense of the world. But before we get too deep into the bleakness of it
I
all,
was going to say.
let's shift gears and talk about what we can do to protect ourselves from gaslighting, both in our personal lives and in these broader societal contexts. Would you like to explore some strategies for resistance and empowerment?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I think after delving into the dark side of manipulation, we could all use a dose of hope and agency.
hmm
So what are some practical steps we can take to recognize gaslighting when it's happening and to push back against it effectively?
Well, the first and most crucial step is awareness. The more we understand how gaslighting works, the better equipped we are to identify those red flags when they pop up.
So we need to familiarize ourselves with those five tactics that we discussed earlier and really start paying attention to patterns in our interactions.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of your gut instinct. If something feels off, it probably is. Now, once you've recognized that you might be dealing with gaslighting, the next step is to set boundaries. You don't have to play their game or engage in endless arguments that lead nowhere.
So it's about refusing to be pulled into their web of manipulation and maintaining a sense of control over your own emotional well-being.
You got it. And remember, setting boundaries also means knowing when to disengage entirely. If it's a toxic relationship that you can safely walk away from, that might be the healthiest choice for you.
That makes sense, especially if the gaslighting is severe and causing you significant distress.
Yep.
But what about those situations where you can't easily escape, like in a work environment or with family member? How do you navigate those tricky dynamics?
Well, in those cases, it's about finding ways to protect yourself while still maintaining some level of interaction. One effective strategy is to simply state the facts without getting defensive or emotional.
Right. Just stay calm and stick to the truth.
Exactly. For example, if someone denies saying something they said, you can calmly reply with, "I remember it differently," or "That's not how I recall the conversation."
So it's about staying grounded in your own reality
Yeah.
and refusing to be drawn into their distortions. But I imagine that takes a lot of inner strength, especially when you're dealing with someone who's skilled at making you doubt yourself.
It does take practice and a willingness to stand your ground. Another helpful technique is to document your experiences. Keep a journal, take notes, or share your concerns with someone you trust. Having a record of events can help you see patterns and validate your own perceptions.
That's a great tip. It's like creating a paper trail to counter their attempts to rewrite history. Now let's talk about the emotional toll of gaslighting. Even if you're able to resist the manipulation, I imagine it still takes a toll on your self-confidence and your trust in your own judgment.
You're absolutely right. Gaslighting can leave deep emotional scars. That's why self-care and support systems are so crucial in the aftermath of these experiences.
So what are some things people can do to rebuild their sense of self and heal from the trauma of gaslighting?
Yeah. Surrounding yourself with people who validate your experiences and remind you of your worth is essential. Talk to trusted friends, family members, or a therapist who can offer a listening ear and an objective perspective. Remember, healing and recovery are possible, and you don't have to go through this alone.
This has been such an empowering conversation. We've gone from feeling a bit overwhelmed by the darkness of gaslighting to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like we've gained a whole new set of tools to navigate those tricky social dynamics and protect ourselves from manipulation.
I'm glad to hear that. Remember, knowledge is power.
Mhm.
And the more we understand about gaslighting, the better equipped we are to recognize it, resist it, and ultimately protect ourselves and others from its harmful effects.
As we've been talking about all these different ways gaslighting can show up,
Mm-hmm.
it's got me thinking about something.
Hmm. What's on your mind?
Well, we've explored how gaslighting can distort our reality and make us doubt ourselves.
Right.
But what about those times when we feel absolutely certain about something,
Yeah.
and yet other people try to convince us we're wrong?
Hmm. Interesting.
How do we know if we're being gaslighted or if we're genuinely misinterpreting things? It's a bit of a head scratcher, isn't it?
That's a really great question, and it gets to the heart of self-awareness and critical thinking. It's about finding that balance between trusting our gut instincts
Right.
and acknowledging that we're not always right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, we've all had those moments where we've misremembered something or jumped to conclusions.
Sure.
So how do we navigate that gray area where our certainty bumps up against the possibility that we might be off base?
I think it starts with being honest with ourselves about our own biases and tendencies. Are we prone to seeing patterns where they don't exist? Do we have a history of overreacting in certain situations?
So a little self-reflection is in order.
Yeah,
Checking in with ourselves to see if we're bringing any baggage or preconceived notions to the table.
exactly. It's about approaching situations with a healthy dose of skepticism,
Yeah.
both toward ourselves and toward others,
Right.
questioning our assumptions, examining the evidence, and being open to different perspectives.
That makes sense. But what about when someone else is adamant that we're wrong about something?
Yeah.
How do we tell the difference between healthy skepticism and gaslighting?
Well, that's where paying attention to the nature of the interaction is crucial. Gaslighting isn't about genuine disagreement or healthy debate.
Okay.
It's about control and manipulation. Remember, it's about undermining your confidence and making you question your sanity.
So it's not so much about what's being said, but how it's being
You
heard.
got it. Pay attention to how the other person is communicating. Are they respectful even if they disagree? Are they open to hearing your perspective? Or are they being dismissive, condescending, or trying to shut down the conversation?
So those would be red flags. Like if they resort to personal attacks or insults
Right.
or try to make you feel small for expressing your feelings.
Exactly. Another warning sign is if they constantly deny or contradict your reality, even when you have evidence to support your
It's
claims.
like they're creating this alternate universe where their version of events is the only one that matters.
You nailed it. And this is where documentation can be helpful.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with someone who's prone to gaslighting, keeping a record of conversations,
Right.
emails, or anything else that helps establish a timeline or factual basis for your memories can be valuable.
Yes, it sounds like it's not about being paranoid or distrusting everyone, but having that healthy awareness that manipulation is possible,
Right.
and taking steps to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. And never forget you have the right to set boundaries. You don't have to engage in conversations that feel unsafe or disrespectful.
Okay.
It's perfectly okay to walk away or limit your interactions with people who exhibit gaslighting tendencies.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new level of awareness about the subtle ways manipulation can work and the
Yeah.
and the importance of trusting my gut.
I'm so glad to hear that. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we understand about gaslighting, the better equipped we are to recognize it, resist it, and protect ourselves and others.
Well said, well said. And on that empowering note, we're going to wrap up this episode of the deep dive. We've explored a lot of ground today, from the historical origins of gaslighting to its impact on individuals and society, and most importantly, how to recognize it and protect ourselves.
It's been a truly fascinating journey.
A huge thank you to our incredible expert for sharing their expertise and insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of gaslighting. Remember, you are not alone. Gaslighting is a common tactic, and many people have experienced it. By speaking out, sharing our stories, and supporting one another, we can break the silence and create a world where truth and authenticity prevail. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.